All right, buddy. I'm going to show you some exercises I like to do to keep it shape and to keep loose. So here we go. Let me just jump right into it. First thing that I like to go over is push-ups. There are several different positions to do a push-up from, which have different sort of benefits. The first one is a common one, which is a wide stance push-up. Your feet, your hands are spread apart, a little outside the shoulder position, and just going straight down and up. And notice my elbows are far out to the side as I do this. This is a fairly good exercise for the upper shoulders and upper chest area. Ultimately, though, it's not a very good push-up for anything else, and it doesn't really develop that much strength or definition within the body or in the pecs. A much better one would be one with the elbows close in to the chest. So if I get down like this and I do a push-up, notice my hands are in close and my elbows are right next to my rib cage, and I push up from there. This is going to isolate the pectoralis major and minor and create some really nice definition here. It also is excellent for the triceps. If I go into the same position, you'll notice it creates a very strong lever right there on that tricep muscle, which is going to create some nice definition here and toneness. The tricep is actually the largest muscle within the arm. So if you're ever trying to develop more definition within your arm itself, triceps is what you want to work on. Okay, so then we've got our tricep push-ups, isolating the triceps and the pecs. And we can develop this a bit further as well and incorporate some other elements. For me, I like to freak out my students in fencing class by doing push-ups on my fingers. Right? Now you can develop some really good finger strength here and the muscles of your forearms by doing this. What you start out with is doing your wide push-ups with your fingers, all 5 fingers on the ground. And as that gets easier, you'll take fingers away until you're left with just the 2. And that's not too bad for me because I've been doing this a really long time. Okay, outside of that, if you want to get a little bit more serious, you can try to increase greater hand strength by doing a holding position with just the fingers, so minus the thumbs. Take the thumbs out and hold this position just on the fingers. And you'll find this to be very challenging. I've been doing this for a while, so I'm a little bit more used to it. The other thing this is good for, this plank position, as you know from yoga, is really good to develop some core strength. However, it doesn't even compare to other types of core strength exercises. There's plenty more you can do that are really, really good, and I've got a great one for you. I'm just not sure how to demonstrate it in this confined space. So let me see here. I'm going to move you over here in the corner. And putting you in the corner. All right. Now I call these bell swings. All right, tilt you up a bit. The idea behind the bell swing is to start with your feet elevated, so they're off the ground, and off to one side. I'm going to take my legs and swing them from one side to the other, like so. This creates a lever every time you go to that stop position and swing back, which is going to activate your core muscles. But the nice thing is it also has a counter effect of engaging the stability muscles throughout the core. In effect, this will actively work all of your core muscles from the front to the back and the lower abs as well. So it's an excellent exercise to develop that sort of strength. So let's take it a bit further. Outside of your belt swings, which I think is probably one of the best core strength developers, you can do some crunches. But sit-ups are classically misunderstood. I've actually got a list somewhere in one of my old Kines books of 12 attributes of an effective sit-up. The problem with a sit-up is that it tends to focus on the upper chest or the neck and the quadriceps, or your hip flexors, the upper leg muscles. So the trick is then to find a way to create a lever that isolates those regions of the core. So let me show you. A crunch is much better than a sit-up. If I do just a general sit-up, I'm actually using a lot of my hips, or of my hip flexors, my quadriceps, to do that for most of that action getting all the way up. And only the last little bit, right about here, am I actually engaging my core. So what we'll do instead is lift the leg slightly, and without taking my hands onto my head, I've got my back lifted, and so I'm pretty much just on my butt and lower back and doing a little pulsing action here. You can hear from my voice that this is already difficult because it puts pressure on the diaphragm as well. But that's going to isolate your core muscles. It only tends to isolate the upper ones though, so we also want to do something that isolates the lower abs as well. For that, leg lifts is a fairly good exercise, but again, tends to really focus more on the hip flexors, which isn't what we're going for. But I'll demonstrate it anyway. From a back position, you're going to lower and raise the legs like so. Now this does create some action here on the lower abs, but there might be a better way to do it. The other thing is why it's not as good is because that action of swinging the legs down tends to put a lot of pressure on the lumbar spine, and if you have any sort of back injury, it's not good for you. So we want to eliminate that as a problem, and we can do it by using a chair. I'm just going to use the edge of my bed here. And this is what I have my students do in my Tai Chi classes. They're all older folks, they usually have back problems and can't walk very well. So doing exercises from a seated position takes a lot of the strain off of other joints and body parts that we don't want to focus on or don't need to. What I'm going to do is, in a seated position, I'm going to raise my legs, and I'm going to bring my arms back and lean back. And now I'm just going to do a little bobbing action. It's real important as you're doing this that you're right on the edge of the chair. I can't do it on my bed because I'm slipping off with these pants, but in a chair it's great. So you get on the edge of your chair, lean back so that your back is not on the backrest. Extend the arms, this creates the lever, and a little pulsing action. Now you can do this with one leg, and it's very effective. It's just as effective, in fact. And then switching legs. And you'll find this works your lower abs quite a bit. And it takes the strain off of your back. Okay, let's see some other exercises. Stretching is an important element of exercise, and you'll find if you're doing heavy strength training exercises, you're going to want to incorporate stretching to at least alleviate some of the soreness and speed your recovery time. Now, modern science has found that the best time to stretch is after you're warm or after your exercise. They find that the amount of soreness is lessened if you're stretching right after. But it's okay to stretch before too, if you're trying to develop general flexibility, which for you wouldn't be a bad thing. Now, there are lots of different kinds of stretches, depending on what you're trying to get more loosened at. Martial artists like to do a lot of leg exercises or leg stretches to increase their range of motion for kicks and flips and such. In general, it's good to have good flexibility in your hips and leg muscles. because they allow for a greater range of motion and healthier joints later in life. If you're too tight, well, that leads to holding patterns that are going to cause imbalances later on and cause you some grief. So we want to avoid that. I've got several students both in dance and Tai Chi classes that unfortunately have just really bad holding patterns, and it comes from not being flexible. In the United States, our culture is set in such that we sit too often. As a result of sitting too much, the tendons in the lower leg for the hamstrings atrophy. They actually shrink a little bit. And what that does is it causes an imbalanced structure in the hips. People tend to start having holding patterns where they're tilting one way or the other. We want to maintain a neutral pelvis position, and so we got to take care of our quadriceps and our hamstrings. But the hamstrings are classically misunderstood. I sometimes ask my students, how many hamstrings do you think you have? And they'll say, oh, we have one, or we have two, two in each leg. We actually have three in each leg. We have two synergistic muscles that run on the inside, and a large one on the outside, known as the bicep femoris. So in order to stretch out your hamstrings effectively, you actually have to have two different types of stretches. And this is something that was never explained to me in cross-country class back in high school, and has led to me having some difficulties. To stretch the hamstrings properly, go into a pike position like so. You can do this standing up or in a seated position like this. I tend to like standing up quite a lot because you're able to lean over something, especially if you're able to lean over something like a chair, so that you take the pressure off your back and are actually able to effectively hinge at your hips. If I have my feet just straight like so, I can effectively stretch some of my hamstrings. But this isn't a very good stretch for the hamstrings. Most people like to have their feet winged, or they wing their feet, and they stretch like this. That's okay, but they're generally doing this because it's easier. And they think, oh, look at how flexible I am, I can touch my toes. Well, that's not really the case. They're only stretching one side of the hamstring, so getting one of the muscles. In order to get the other side, you need to turn your toes slightly in this pyramid shape. You'll find that's a lot harder, and that's what you should concentrate on if you want to develop greater hamstring range of motion in your legs. This is classically the one that holds people back. All right, enough of that. You can also do some general stretching for the lower tendons along the length of the leg and in the knee, bringing your leg in close like so, and reaching out on one side. This is easy on the back, it's easy on the legs, it's a very nice stretch. I would avoid stretching like this though. You might see some people stretching like this. This puts unnecessary pressure on the joints, and you get just as effective a stretch by bringing the leg in than having it out. So do this one instead. Have that on both sides. All right, for the hip flexors, I'm going to tilt you up. It's important that you're keeping your hips straight. So in other words, I don't want to go into this stretch and collapse. Stay upright with your body and pull the leg back while stretching into your abdominal region as well. So not here, but here. All right. I like a few particular exercises for the calf muscles as well. And this is another interesting area as far as muscle groups go. Your calves actually have two different muscles. There's on the surface, the most superficial muscles are your gastrocnemius, or your calf muscles. that tend to show up when you've exercised a lot. And then the other one under that is actually a bigger muscle, and it's called the soleus. They have different attachment points up here, but they connect at the same point down here at the Achilles tendon. In order to exercise these muscles, it's pretty easy. I like to do leg lifts where I'm just going up on my toes. So raising up on the toes, you can see. And you can do this on one foot and the other to make it harder. And if you've got some weights, you can hold those in your hands while you're doing these to make it even more effective. To stretch these muscles, we've got to do something a little different. I like doing this, or using a stair is really good. I have my knees straight, and this is an effective stretch. And then I also want to bend the knee, and this now gets the soleus muscle. Straight, I'm getting the gastrocs. Bent, I'm getting the soleus. Now I've got a little tool I like to use to help me exercise these muscles a little bit more effectively. There we go. 25-pound weighted vest. You can get these at most sports stores. And it just buckles in real nicely. And now I can use this to use my do my leg lifts, or go running with, or climb stairs with. And it's a great way to get a little extra exercise out of it. Now, one other thing I want to mention about exercising your hams or your calf muscles, and that's making sure that your toes are in alignment. Here we go. If I go into a raised position, I want to make sure that my my ankles aren't falling out to the side, like so. Going into this position is ineffective, and is actually dangerous. You could hurt yourself, and it doesn't get the muscle very effectively. Going straight up, keeping the alignment over your big toe and the big toe joint is where you really want to exercise and focus on. Okay. Now, as you know, your upper body is really important too. So let's talk about some of those. I've done a little bit talking about push-ups. I love push-ups. Used to hate push-ups. But there's plenty we can talk about as far as other attributes. Now, when I was working some warehouse jobs, I'd often have to carry around an object, usually, or it was like a scan gun for labels. And it was a few pounds. Over the course of a whole day, though, this would really wear on my arms, and I'd find my back getting very sore from that. As a dance teacher for ballroom dance, and somebody who plays the violin as well, I'm often having my arms up in this sort of a position, or in a framed position. So this puts a lot of strain actually on the back muscles. Here we've got the trapezius, which is a very large muscle. And we have down here, your lats, or latissimus dorsi, which is also a fairly large muscle. And then in between the shoulder blades, right back here, is another muscle group. And these all need to be taken care of very specially. Your center comes from your spine, and your arm actually starts from back here in the back with your shoulder blade. So we want to take care of this joint. If you find yourself getting sore here, you get knots or headaches stemming from your back area, this is a good stretch to help with that. If you've got a tennis ball, it's nice to put that on the ground and lay on it, and actually kind of roll that around a little bit. But outside of that, there's a stretch that I invented myself. That is, I figured out how to do it. I've never seen it in any other stretching books or anywhere. So I'm going to take credit for it. You're going to bring your leg up in a crossed position, like so. This creates an opening here near your groin. You're going to take the same arm side, so right leg, right arm, and put it through that hole. You're going to bend at the elbow here across your calf muscle. And now I've got this. This becomes my lever. I can now hold this arm in place or just to the side, and I'm going to kind of pull away from it. And you should feel this stretch across your upper back around where your shoulder blade is and in between the shoulder blade. You should hold this stretch until the muscles relax. And trust me, you'll know it when it happens. If you find this sore, tight, or generally uncomfortable, it's probably a good idea to try to do this stretch then every now and then, because you shouldn't have any pain there at all. So I like to hold this. It usually takes about 10 to 20 seconds, depending on what I've been doing. Sometimes it's more messed up than other days. And this is really good because it gets all of that tightness out. And I can feel it now. It's relaxing. And now there's no pain. It feels really nice. It's very soothing for that muscle group. All right, that's really good. I'm going to try the other side just to see where I'm at. This side's a little bit better today, but I actually had a headache on this coming from this part of my neck today, and it's probably just because this area was so tight, and it feels fine now. So, want to stretch that out and wait till those muscles relax. There, much better. Sometimes, depending on how much exercise or physical activity I'm doing, I need to do that every day, or maybe even a few times a day if the muscles are really broken down from a hard workout. It can be really useful. All right. Outside of that, there's actually another exercise or another stretch here that we can do from the same position. Bring your leg across here in this cross position. Actually allows us to stretch muscles here in our glutes. There are 6 stabilization muscles here underneath your glutes that are very important because there's a nerve that runs through them into your leg, and it's called the sciatic nerve. Because it runs in between those muscle groups, if those muscle groups are tight, you can develop something called sciaticus, which is really uncomfortable and painful. You never want to experience it, and it's a very easy way to avoid it just by doing this stretch called the piriformis stretch, named after the muscle associated with the one that causes the problems with the nerve, the piriformis. I simply go in this position, I get nice and tall, my back is straight, I'm going to hinge at the hips, leaning forward into this. You'll feel this general stretch right back here in your butt. You can adjust this stretch, and nudge around is important. Leaning to the side, kind of turning a bit, bringing the knee up into you, turning out to the side, just to find the tight areas and make sure those are alleviated. That's about all I have for stretching in those cases. Those are about the most important ones I can think of. It's important to take care of your chest a bit. You can use a wall, putting your hand against a wall and turning to the side in order to stretch out your pecs a bit if you need to. Other than that, most of your body should be pretty well off. Take care of your forearms as well. Little stretches here and here, turning the palms out and in. Good ways to take care of your forearms and prevent any problems with carpal tunnel or things like that later on. But women generally have more problems with carpal tunnel than men, so you may not have to worry about that. Let's talk about some other exercises. I was showing you my vest, which can be very effective, but I also like to do some other things for the upper body. And a good rope can be really useful for these things. I got this at the hardware store. Just got a few feet of it here. What I'm going to do Well, what I was doing at my old place, I had a pillar in the room that I used to string this around. If you don't have one of those, you can try to find something else. I'm going to demonstrate this on the door jamb. So I've got quite a bit of rope here, and I've got it strung through the door jamb, right up there above the hinge, so it stays elevated for me. I'm going to wrap this in my hand, maybe once around, okay, on both sides. And now I can use this as a swing to exercise with. So I'll get like this and lean back, pulling away, and pulling myself up with it. And you can use this to work your biceps, your back muscles, your shoulder muscles, your triceps. So it's got a lot of effective exercise you can do from it. You can probably invent some of your own. It's pretty easy. If you reverse it, so now I'm going back the other way from a standing position, you can do push-ups with it. And these are really effective because you're in a free position with a rope holding you. It's going to incorporate more isolation muscles or stabilization muscles in your arm and shoulder. So this can be really effective for that. Again, triceps, shoulders, push-ups, and lats. So many positions you can do this from. All right. Well, that's a fair bit of information for you already. I've always liked to incorporate the things that I have available to me because I only like to exercise by myself, usually in my room. So I figure out what I can do to make my exercises effective. And you don't necessarily need a lot of equipment for it. Now I do have a large barbell like this, which is nice to do more strenuous weight exercises for the upper body. But you don't necessarily need that. You can get a few weights or heavy items and stack a backpack full of them and use the carrier to do a lot of these as well. So just play around with it and see what you can come up with. Hopefully this was useful for you, and let me know what your feedback is, and I can put together another video some other time and show you some other exercises I like to do. Alright, see you later.